The hosts of Two Bored Apes are not registered investment advisors. The podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing said on it should be construed as investment advice.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff.
Welcome to episode 52 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Roy, aka Zeneca. Roy, how are you?
I'm very full, Jamie. Like, I know we start every episode with this. I am keeping up with the tradition, but my last meal was about 2 hours ago, and I'm still stuffed to the brim.
It sounds like you overate during that meal if you're still.
Oh, I absolutely overate. I overate, and then I ate more, is basically what happened. We ordered some Szechuan food for dinner. I got some mapo tofu, got some nice ribs, got some a bunch of other random dishes. It was all good, but I guess one of the last bites I had an entire chili in it. So I was full, and I went and lay on the couch as you do, and then I was late, and then my mouth started just burning, and then I remembered I made scones yesterday, and we had some scones with clotted cream and jam.
Say the name of that pastry for me again.
Scones? Do you say scones?
I say scones, yeah.
Scones. Anyway, and I was like, ooh, that sounds delicious. And I bet the sweetness will counteract the spiciness. So let me go have one of those. And that's how I went from being extremely full to eating even more. And 2 hours later, still being very full.
Are we going to do the one chip challenge on this podcast one of these days?
I would love
Speaking
to.
of eating too spicy, I have two of them in my basement right now.
Did you want to? Are you going to come to Vegas next month?
Oh, I only heard about it like a second ago, so probably not, but maybe.
Yeah. Marfa for Artblocks. This is great podcasting.
It is. Yeah. There's, by the way, as far as news of the week is concerned, this is the biggest news in the history of crypto, basically. So we should probably jump into that.
We should probably talk about the merge
instead of talking about scones versus scones
and just our personal plans of meeting up.
What are you doing next month? I'm going to be. Yeah, go ahead. Let's get into it.
This is a podcast about NFTs, ostensibly some random stuff, and DeFi.
News of the week.
News of the week. The merge. It's here. It happened.
Yeah, it happened. We should have done an episode in the more immediate preceding period, but scheduling got in the way, and we weren't able to. But boy, it kind of felt like it was never going to happen for a long time because it's, I don't know when the first date was for it, but it feels like it was probably like 2017 or something.
I think it was,
pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And then I would say even as recently as maybe 6 weeks ago, I was thinking it's still going to get pushed back, but it did not. It finally did not. And it seemed to go off completely without a hitch. I mean, should we explain what it is first or no?
Yeah, maybe let's break it down. Maybe not everyone
probably
knows.
know, but
it's me. Okay, I'll explain.
It
so the merge is basically, when it comes to blockchains, there are various ways that you can secure the chain by. I mean, I'm going to try not to go into too many layers of complexity, but basically,
your understanding will only let you go like 2 layers.
This is very true. Yeah.
Anyway, so.
There are different routes you can take for the nodes to come to consensus as to which Ethereum state of the blockchain is the correct one. And if enough people agree that it's correct, then that's the one everyone uses, and so on and so forth. And the original methodology that Bitcoin introduced and still uses is proof of work, basically meaning that in order to secure the blockchain and prove that a block is valid, a block is just a series of transactions or actions, you basically have a computer solve increasingly complex computational cryptographic problems, and it requires an increasing amount of power and energy, and is very inefficient for electricity and environmental impacts, but it's very secure and it works. And so when Ethereum launched in 2014, it launched in 2015.
I was impressed that you were confidently saying a year.
Yeah, it decided to go with the proof of work model because that's what worked. But basically, since day one, Vitalik, I think maybe even in the Ethereum white paper, wrote, but we will transition to proof of stake. And so the
It's been the
difference
plan
is,
for a very long time, for sure, is to transition to proof of stake.
And so proof of stake works differently, where instead of having to solve these complex computational problems with increasing energy and other costs, the network is secured by having a lot of individuals staking ETH in the case of Ethereum, and effectively locking it up and using that to secure the network. And there's a lot of complex math, but if you don't do like the right thing effectively, you lose the ETH that you're staking, or some amount of it is slashed. And again, there's a lot of complex math that goes into it, but effectively it is a way to Vitalik actually during the live stream last night came up with a pretty good analogy, which is proof of work is based on the laws of physics and we are limited by that, whereas proof of stake allows us to come up with like our own laws and creative ways that are more energy efficient to solve the same problems.
Yeah, proof of stake is much more social, where you're basically, if you want to run a validator node, you're putting up at a minimum of 32 Ethereum is what it costs to have the validator node. And basically the way that the blockchain is being, how do I put this? Make sure that everything that's being added to the blockchain is valid is, like you were saying, there's the slashing mechanism. So if you put forth, there's also the epochs. This is complicated, and now we're starting to veer off.
And we are not the right people.
Yeah, so there's the blocks, but then every 32 blocks is called an epoch, and then once an epoch happens, the block is basically super finalized. And until then, the other validators can kind of check if something that previously passed had been invalid. But the point is, you have your node running and you have your 32 Ethereum staked. And if you try and pass through faulty transactions, or you are awarded the block and aren't online at the time, you risk losing some of your stake. And so basically it's a financially and socially motivated way to make sure that the blockchain is secure, rather than just a pure brute force computational power situation like you're using in proof of work.
Yeah. So that's the difference between basically proof of work and proof of stake. The merge, the event that happened yesterday, is basically the idea was, and has been since day one, to transition Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake. But that's not an easy thing to do technologically. It's very, very difficult. The analogy I have heard is, imagine a gas car with a regular engine driving down a highway at like a couple hundred miles an hour, and then you having to match that speed with another car and swapping out the engine to a battery engine in real time, something like that. Effectively, so what has been happening is that in, I think, December 2020, they launched the Beacon chain. And that is basically a blockchain, a version of Ethereum that is just or like a fork of Ethereum or like a proof of stake version. That is the only purpose of the Beacon chain was to be a proof of concept for proof of stake. And it would just validate blocks and blocks and blocks. People would, I believe, stake ETH to help that and lock it up. And that's where this whole staked ETH thing came from, I believe. And this has been running since, I think, December 2020, so almost 2 years. And the goal was, and happened, was that eventually you would somehow merge that chain with the proof of work chain, so that at a certain block, all the transactions just click on over, and there's no downtime in this chain, and it just merges from, and it's mind-boggling when you think about it. And so they tested it. They did it on, I think, 3 different test chains just to be like, let's make sure it works on a test chain, and not before going to Ethereum and risking hundreds of billions of dollars of assets. And nothing is certain in life, but most people were like 99.9% sure. I think like most people that knew what was up was like, yeah, okay, this is very unlikely that it's not going to work. But there was still a bit,
like we had said earlier, it's been delayed a lot. So it's not like they said, oh, we're going to get it done by this day.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of sloppily went for it. Like they made sure that they were ready for it, even if it meant delaying it a lot. And then, subjecting yourself to a lot of FUD from all sorts of people that are in crypto but are not inclined to like Ethereum the most, would talk about how it's a big risk and they keep pushing it back and all this stuff, which now seems like sort of invalid now succeeded.
Behind us now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I stayed awake till about 11 a.m. Watch it. It was meant to happen at like 6 a.m. But then what happened was, because it's based on a certain block number, as it got closer to that, miners started shutting down their rigs, so it took longer for the blocks to process, and yeah, it just kept getting pushed. And then, but I stayed awake. I watched, there was a live stream on YouTube from the Ethereum Foundation. Vitalik was on there, and a bunch of other smart people were talking about all these gigabrain stuff. And then we watched, and then there was just like, the moment it happened, it was like everyone was like, cool, it happened. That was not the butt clenching part. It was like, as you mentioned, the epoch. It was those 32 blocks afterwards that there was just like literally a window where like each one would go green when it was like approved and all properly done. And when all 32 were done, then there was like this celebration, and it was a pretty cool moment.
Have you read ZeroX Fubar's post about it?
I don't believe so.
So ZeroX Fubar is just another crypto Twitter persona. Basically, they have a Substack, and they recently wrote basically an overview of what exactly does proof of stake sort of mean, and what are it basically shows you various attack vectors that a bad actor running nodes might try and do, and then shows you the ways in which the mechanisms built into the Ethereum proof of stake system would prevent them from, gaining control of the network, double spending, whatever types of things you want to talk about. It's very interesting. We'll link to it. It's probably the best thing that I've read in terms of being sort of a concise explainer of it.
Nice. Yeah. There's a lot of people were talking about replay attacks, specifically around the time of the merge, which I don't 100% understand, but it was like the most prominent attack vector for people at that merge time. Basically, so when the merge happened, Ethereum just became a proof of stake chain, but there were all these people saying, well, the miners are going to fork and try and run a proof of work version of Ethereum, kind of like Ethereum Classic, because they're incentivized to do that, and then it would copy the state of Ethereum, and all your NFTs would exist there, and all your tokens would exist there. And then if you tried to sell them on there was like some way that they could take your transaction hash there and basically apply it to the proof of stake chain and have it run through and trick the chain into thinking they've signed a valid transaction.
Yeah.
So basically the advice was just sit in your hands the whole way through, and that's what I did. And interesting stuff.
I think the proof of work version is now trading for like $17 or something like that. I saw.
Yeah, the estimates, the futures were like 1% of ETH, which sounds about right.
And the miners are just, I was going to say, the miners are not going to be able to afford to run the mining rigs, I should say.
No.
If the reward is just those. So it just seems like it should fizzle out.
It should. I noticed that there was a severe uptick in Ethereum Classic, in the hash rate for Ethereum Classic, which kind of makes sense. These miners have rigs. There are other proof of work blockchains. Some of them will go to attempt and try and mine them, but the demand, or rather the supply, coming from all of the Ethereum miners. And the funny thing is, everyone's like, gamers are rejoicing because the price of graphics cards, like 3070, 3080 GTX cards, are like, just, they used to be like $2,000, and now they're like, I don't know, $200. Price wise, ETH dropped after the merge. It was maybe 1,600. It dropped about, it's in the high 1400s, low 1500s. The whole market tanked a bit, but I think it seems like it was kind of a buy the rumor, sell the news event, where because everyone expected it to go well, it didn't really gigapump like some people thought it might.
Yeah, I wonder how much too there's a sense from people that you'll need a week or 2 weeks or 3 months or something to really feel like it's definitely secure. Like I can envision people being afraid that a month and a half in the future we'll find some way that this didn't actually go as smoothly as it seemed like it did, and where there's some sort of attack vector or weakness that gets revealed.
Oops. Yeah. It's certainly, I think the longer the time goes on, the more we're going to see the impacts and effects of the proof of stake. Like,
so do you want to talk about the basic supply and demand issue, that sort of, because I guess I'll just start it and then you can kind of take off. But in proof of work, the miners are getting paid in Ethereum. When they get the new block, they get a certain amount of Ethereum. I unfortunately don't remember exactly how much you get per block. But then basically, in order to pay the bills of the electricity to run these mining rigs, they basically are, generally speaking, immediately selling those Ethereum that they get rewarded, which is putting daily constant sell pressure on it from the people running the network. And there's no longer that happening. And so, all else being equal, if the network is equally valuable to society or whatever, getting rid of those forced sellers ought to be a bullish event.
Yeah, and not only that, the rewards that were being given to miners, some of those are now being given to stakers. So if you stake the 32 ETH to run a node, you do get rewards, but the total issuance is lower than what it was. So the daily total, so there's still some supply coming on the market, but instead of it going to miners who have to instantly sell it to cover their costs, it's going to stakers who are, generally speaking, probably more incentivized to hold and support.
Now I don't know if it's automatically staked, the rewards. I guess not, but right now there's no way to unstake your staked F. That there's another upgrade coming to Ethereum. I think maybe it's supposed to be very late in the year, November or something like that.
I don't know when exactly, but I saw a funny thing recently where someone was like kind of criticizing the thing, and they were like, well, you stake it, and they literally haven't yet written the code for how to unstake it. And it's not there yet. But issuance has gone down, and ETH is actually deflationary at the moment. So because of EIP 1559, which came out, I think, earlier this year or late last year, it basically made it so that when gas is at a certain level, very high amounts, the network is burning so much that ETH is deflationary. And with my proof of work, it was a very high amount, and it was very rare throughout the day for ETH to be deflationary. Now, I'm looking at this website, ultrasound.money. Since the merge, the supply change of ETH is down 173 ETH in 12 hours. And I think I was listening to Bankless. They basically did the math and said, anytime the average GUI is over like 15 or 18, ETH is deflationary. And obviously lately it's been very low, but we've seen periods where it's significantly higher, and maybe we see prolonged periods where ETH is just, even if it's not significantly deflationary, it's probably not going to be inflationary. It's probably going to plateau out at a certain point, and we'll see that supply crunch. If you had to just
throw out a number over the last, let's say, 2 months, what do you think average Y has been? Because it feels like to me 20 something is kind of average.
Yeah, I would say a little lower. It's been really low. Like
it's definitely been occasionally
maybe
really
like 15
low.
Yeah
because I mean, I'm just thinking mostly when I've been like foreclosing on NFT file loans and stuff like that is when I'm most usually seeing it, because that's something where, unlike minting or whatever, there's no time pressure whatsoever. So I can put a very, very small GUI and just kind of wait. So that's when I've been looking at it lately, and it feels like it's been around 15 to 25,
which is deflationary. So a lot of really good long-term reasons for ETH, for people to be bullish on ETH. We haven't even really touched on like the environmental narrative either, where so many people were against NFTs because it was burning the environment. You mint one NFT, use the same energy as Sweden or something crazy. It's just like all these people were just saying crazy nonsense, and then media would run with it.
But not all of it is. I mean, it was, the Ethereum network was using a ton of electricity.
It was.
So that overarching argument is not totally nonsense, but
no,
there is an element of misinterpreting it, just basically lying to talk about what a single transaction is doing versus the overall state of the network, and not comparing that to other things like Twitter or whatever, where you're on Twitter complaining about how much electricity Ethereum uses, while Twitter's servers are also burning tons and tons of electricity.
Do you know what percentage of global energy consumption Ethereum proof of work was responsible for?
So I saw the stat. I don't know how accurate it is, but I think people were basically saying that switching from, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I saw was that switching from proof of work to proof of stake lowered global electricity by 0.2%.
Yeah, that's what I heard, which is crazy.
I saw somebody responding to it saying it's more like 0.05%. I have no idea where either of these numbers come from. I think I remember a while ago as well hearing that Ethereum was like the equivalent of the energy use of the country of Norway or something like that.
Sounds plausible. Yeah. Anyway, now it is basically 99.9% lower than what it used to be. So I think as time goes on, a lot of big companies that were hesitant to get into NFTs on ETH, like we saw people go to Tezos, Solana, Polygon, there's probably more incentive for them to use ETH mainnet or L2s. And yeah.
Yeah, I think also just the because of the way that you have to keep upgrading your mining rig because computers get more powerful and stuff over time. It's kind of an annoying and not super passive way to do something with your money. Whereas I could see more institutional sized money being much happier to run validator nodes where they're just parking the ETH and running a totally normal computer. Rather than trying to have a warehouse of super ultra powerful, specifically designed machines that you have to keep upgrading every 6 months or you become obsolete. So in terms of like the big sticky money, it does seem like this is a big good move for Ethereum. Who knows what's going to end up happening? But it does seem like it's liable to attract that kind of thing.
Punk6529 had a really great tweet today that I liked, which was, we now have both Bitcoin running proof of work and Ethereum running proof of stake, both obviously experimental things in the grand scheme of things. And now they get to run their course. And there are concerns about proof of stake being less centralized if a lot of the nodes are controlled by Amazon Web Services. Yes, more centralized. And I love that approach. It's like, all right, cool. Let's, I see the appeal of Bitcoin. It doesn't do anything, but that's one of the benefits is it doesn't do anything. It chugs along. It's meant to be a store of value, whereas ETH allows us to do all these fantastic smart contract things, but it's still risky and experimental as well. And now we get to see both play out. And
yeah, and yeah, it's interesting. You're talking about the smart contract things that Ethereum allows, but so much of what people that are proponents of it like about it is very theoretical. It's the potential to do all these interesting things that we still haven't really figured out how to do or how to do in a practical way. Just as a for instance, if you're trying to store data on chain, it's prohibitively expensive to store any, like 1 megabyte is outrageous. And so there's a lot of stuff that you can do in these old centralized ways that we don't really know how to reasonably do them in Ethereum. But once we can kind of figure out how to do some of that older stuff, but now kind of mix it in with this decentralized thing that has its own separate advantages, that's when theoretically a lot of the power comes out.
Yeah. We have so much more to talk about. Should we jump to other news of the week?
Sure. Even though that it's so much bigger than anything else.
Yeah, like we could.
We can still talk about the other stuff.
We can still talk about the other stuff. Like it's kind of related, especially so Starbucks introducing their NFT program. That is pretty big. Like they have, I think, I read 100 million people go through like their doors on a daily basis, and have about 25 million people signed up to their loyalty rewards program, which is now effectively transitioning to including NFT rewards, even though they're not using the word NFTs. They're not telling you don't have to have a wallet, you don't have to use crypto. It's all, but it's done on the Polygon network. So I don't know. I'm curious to know the specifics of how it all works. I imagine.
Yeah, I got a link of their big post about it that I sent to myself to read later, but I haven't gotten around to reading it.
I think it's a good approach. I think it's exactly what we need to sort of Trojan horse people into the concept of owning digital assets in a way that maybe they weren't familiar with and aren't ready to jump down the rabbit hole of self-custodied wallets and open markets and using cryptocurrency. And we're probably going to see a lot more of it.
It does seem like, and I haven't looked into it all that much, but in terms of what we've seen with existing brands getting into the space, has been for the most part, much more simple and cynical, possibly attempts where they're basically just going, hey, we're going to make NFTs, and if you're a fan of our company or are a flipper who wants to try and sell it to the next fool, we're just going to sell you these NFTs with pictures of our brand and our mascot or whatever. Whereas this seems to be something that is taking the value of what you can do with having a list of addresses that you can airdrop stuff to, and know publicly how long they have had this, and all that sort of thing that an open blockchain allows, and utilizing that in a rewards program. Now, again, I don't know the specifics of what their plan is, but it seems much less like they're just going, hey, buy this digital picture of a Starbucks cup.
So I read the thing a little while ago, a few days ago. I can't remember all of the details, but like, from my understanding, it's basically they will have things you can do like within their rewards system to gain, I think, badges they call them, whether it might be playing a game or answering a quiz or some low effort thing. And then you can, and maybe like buying coffee, it adds to your rewards and all the usual stuff as well.
I would assume so. I think they're trying to incentivize people to buy more of their product. That would make sense.
And then the rewards come in the form of you might be able to claim access to a coffee making class, or to purchase a coffee maker, or I think the biggest one I saw was to visit one of their coffee plantations in Costa Rica or something like that, which, those are very substantial rewards. And, it's not something that, like, they could have done all those things with the traditional, you don't need the blockchain for that, but it's sort of like, it allows a little more creativity and makes it just a better experience when you use.
I mean, ultimately we're going to have to just wait and see exactly what the implementation is like. And also, I am not a existing Starbucks rewards member, so I don't know what the pre-NFT version of it was like either. So it's hard to compare and contrast when I didn't use the old thing and the new thing hasn't even really started yet. But it is interesting.
I was at the train station day before yesterday and walked past a Starbucks, and I never think twice. I don't particularly like their coffee, but because I was reading all the stuff, I was like, maybe I should go get a coffee, sign up for the rewards, and then I thought better of it and didn't call my train. But they almost got me with their marketing. They almost got me through the door. Should we talk about? Did you see the Disney? You did. Like, the Disney came out with their big event and unveiled a really cool looking augmented reality clip of like
I just saw the clip on Twitter. Basically, I didn't actually go onto the Disney Plus app to watch it or any of that, but it seemed interesting. Do you know more about it than that, though? That was all I saw was the tweet and like the 20-second video.
I know a little more about it. I think it was unveiled at they have like a yearly event that's like, I think it's called D3 or something, where it's like their version of Comic-Con or BlizzCon type thing, but for Disney related things, where they unveil like new products, new shows, and all that kind of stuff.
You didn't go to BlizzCon with me, did you?
No, unfortunately not. I remember hearing about how much fun that was. Anyway, when's the Dota International? Maybe we should. I think it's in Singapore. Anyway, and at this event, they spoke a lot about the metaverse, and they unveiled this video of basically augmented reality where someone is using their phone, pointing it at the TV, and then out of the TV comes out like this beautiful waterfall, and a tree pops up, and there's flowers, and there's like a fish jumping out of a pond, and you can sort of see it really looks amazing. And like, when I think technology catches up a little bit better, like with VR glasses, AR glasses that are comfortable and just work well, that immersive experience is really going to take us next level. And and I think that they also announced plans for like including NFTs in a way that I think that they wanted to make people feel like, bring the experience of being at Disneyland or Disney World to the 99.9% of humans who can't travel and go there, somehow to like bring that to your living room. And they're figuring, but then if you do go there, and like, they're going to be able to like track your experiences at Disney World and tailor your content to that, which starts to get a little dystopian, and you wonder how much data they're collecting. But potential there.
But don't they, like, if somebody's dying on Disney, they like drag them out of the property so they don't have to worry about a person actually dying on Disney. So it's already dystopian.
Yeah. How much worse can it get?
Have you somebody um did like guerrilla shooting? I don't know if you know
Guerrilla
GUER
yeah.
And created basically a horror movie that takes place within Disneyland. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of this.
I wish I knew the name so I could keep talking about it a little bit, but somebody did it and it sounds funny. Keep talking because my brain is not working right now.
Okay. I think that was like largely it for the Disney stuff. The other thing we have for news of the week is Doodles raising $54 million in VC capital at a $700 something million valuation.
I think it was 704 or something.
Something like
tiny.
that. Which is the just yet another one of these S-tier PFP projects raising a ludicrous amount of VC capital at an even more ludicrous valuation.
Yeah, so they had announced maybe 2 months ago or something that they were raising, right? But we didn't know the numbers until just the other day. And there's been a lot of talk on Twitter about how Doodle's team has not been communicating at all.
54 days without a tweet.
and people, a lot of complaining and stuff like that. And then we heard this. So it seemed like the market also liked it because there was a lot of upward momentum.
Yeah, it liked it for a minute. It's kind of come back down. I think there were a lot of mixed reactions. Yeah, partially there's been this like more intricate and involved conversation about like if a VC is investing $50 million into a company, how are they thinking of generating profit off that? Is part of that selling more NFTs to the community and secondary market royalties, and then all of a sudden the token holders, they're not like first class citizens, they're the customer in this whole ecosystem. And I think that it's sort of a lot of realization about misaligned, misguided perceptions from the early days, where people literally thought they were buying like equity in a company, and then people thought that they were buying,
which I think is something that we've tried to explain a lot on this podcast is not happening.
It is
and
not.
If it was happening, it would be illegal in most jurisdictions. And that if you are buying these things and hoping to make money from them, you have to think of them like you would collectibles or something like that, where you're just it's a hobby. And you know, if you pick the right ones, you can possibly sell them later to other people who are interested in that same hobby. And not going, I'm getting a percentage of the revenues of this company called ZenLabs, because that's not how it works.
No, it's not. And I think it's I have mixed feelings about VCs. I think that they're not evil, and they can add value obviously to projects and companies and scale them and open doors and make them do big things. And on behalf of Doodles, I think that they really want to become like the next Disney, this global entertainment, informational, music, movies, gaming, everything, cultural powerhouse. And that's what they're building for. And you know, if they succeed, then the value of these early collectibles should go up, as well as being just collectibles. Because they're NFTs, they have the ability to give real utility and value, like access to, if they have a Doodles Park, Doodle Land, you know, all of a sudden you have free access or once a year access, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways to reward them, but legally speaking, they obviously can't say that, you know, there's this whole thing about securities and not promising future rewards and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or an expectation of profit, I think, is specifically what you're...
The good old Howey test.
So, and this is... I've brought this up before, but it's the analogy that I find to be sort of the most apt, where, you know, sometimes when the conversation is leaning this way, you have people going like, well, then why would I buy it, or why would there be value to it? And the thing that is the most analogous to me has always been, if you look at the first issue or the first appearance comic books of the very popular Marvel characters, or DC, but Marvel's really the big guy these days, they're super duper valuable. Now, if you have Amazing Fantasy 15, which is the first issue that Spider-Man ever appeared in, you do not own the rights to Spider-Man. You do not get a share of the revenue of future endeavors that involve Spider-Man. None of that stuff is what you own. All you own is an original of this thing from which this popular intellectual property has spawned. And because it's so popular and because there's a scarcity to it, it's worth a lot of money to some people. And the same thing theoretically can apply to, Doodles, if Doodles become as popular, or some percentage as popular of an intellectual property as things like Spider-Man.
How much would one of those comics go for? Do you
know? It's so see. This is another way where it's different than NFTs for the most part, is because there's a range. You can have a very beat up copy, and you can have a mint condition copy, and anywhere in between. And there's like one big company that is, for the most part, the golden standard for grading them. But yeah, I think a really bad copy would maybe be $15,000, and like a perfect copy would be over $1 million.
Wow.
I know the market for Daredevil #1 quite a bit better than I do for Amazing Fantasy, but Amazing Fantasy is much more expensive. I'll pull up eBay right now and see what we got.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that one of these prime collectible comics from decades and decades ago that has spawned one of the largest and most successful franchises still sells for less than like a gold ape did at its peak. And
yeah, that is something that I've thought about a bit too, as far as, has the market put the cart before the horse on some of this stuff. The grading goes from 0 to 10. Just today, an Amazing Fantasy 15, which is again the first appearance of Spider-Man comic book, that was graded at 2.5. So that's a very bad version of it. It's beat up, a lot of damage to it. Sold for $36,800.
Wow, that's 3 doodles, 4 doodles. This is going to be off topic again, but Marvel is like the big dog now. Do you know the history? Like, was DC at one point the massive franchise, or was it always relatively even, and then now Marvel just took off?
I can't get too specific, but I would say they've been considered the big two for a long time, and it wasn't until the MCU that Marvel really became the big dog. And now, because at this point there's a ton of Marvel characters that lots of people care about, whereas if you go to DC, they're basically down to Batman and Superman that people really care about. Green Lantern has never been able to hit big. Wonder Woman has kind of, but Marvel is taking their fifth tier characters from the comic books that were very obscure and making them household names.
Yeah, they're doing a hell of a job over there.
They are.
Any more? I think that's news of the week largely wrapped up.
Yeah. News of the week.
News of the week. Oh, we should probably mention we're committed to doing these podcasts same time every week, and they'll come out on Fridays, weekly, fresh, current, day after the merge. Anyway, should we move on to art blocks and generative art in general?
Sure.
Art blocks
and
generative art in general.
How many curateds have happened since our last episode?
I think 2. I think we had Polychrome Music and Raster.
Polychrome Music was sort of a big deal because it was the first time we had a double artist.
Yeah, and I'm obsessed with them. Rosendahl.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the algorithms, which you like in terms of just being sort of melodic.
And I love like the music. I think is better. The aesthetics is better. That you can play 2 or 3 of them at once, and they riff off each other. It's hands down one of my favorite drops. I have a tendency, and I think it's a good thing. Maybe it's not, but like my favorite drops are always like the relatively low floor ones, like Zeneca and Parabellum, and this one, which means I get to collect a lot more, but also that I don't necessarily buy a ton of the ones that go to the highest valuations. But I had a lot of fun collecting it. Yeah. Do you have any?
I do not have any yet, but I have definitely been acquiring a good amount of stuff lately, filling in some gaps and getting, seconds and thirds of other things. But I've not yet got a Polychrome Music.
How about Raster, which is the most recent curated drop?
I've not gotten one of those either.
Have you looked at them? Do you have?
I have looked at them, and it reminds me of some of the very early FX Hash stuff, like Defrag, in particular. I think there was one other one, maybe Sedimentary Disillusion is another one that it kind of reminded me of. But I looked at them a decent amount, but again, I have not acquired any.
I missed the mint. It was the first mint that I missed since Gazers, which I obviously regret missing. But it was just busy. We were traveling, and I really like them. I think that they're an animated drop, and they look a lot better during the animation than the thumbnail. And this is a problem that, or quote unquote problem that, this is a trait that a lot of art blocks drops have, where unless you take the time to go in and spend time with them, it's harder to appreciate than say
if you're just scrolling
Fidenza.
OpenSea, the animated ones are just you don't see what it is.
But I collected a few because I really do like the animations. But
now, you've looked at it with the different levels of resolution.
Pixel, you can change the pixel size, which I think is pretty cool. At the lowest pixel size, it reminds me a little bit of Spotlight by Joshua Bagley, but I think that's slightly different style. But I like the color palettes. Have you had a chance to look at the upcoming curated drop? I think they announced it earlier today.
I don't think so. I don't know.
I've barely
announced it.
Barely had a chance. It's called Act of Emotion by Kelly Milligan, and it was only like 3 hours ago
right now
that Jeff made it. All right, well, let me know what you think before I give you my thoughts. It is again an animated piece. It sort of renders kind of like these thick brush strokes, various colors and stroke density and patterns, and there's some unique things going on. What's your first impression of it?
Well, so I'm only seeing mint number 1. I'm trying to see if I can find a bunch of the test mints. Here we go. I think I'm gonna. They look like they might make like really nice prints. Is the first thing that I've thought. Now I'm looking at a little bit.
I think they have a little bit of a brush pop vibe, where it's like
definitely
these brush strokes.
Well, I like this. I think I like this project.
That's interesting. I am not that big of a fan, and it is very rare for me to not say, "Oh, I love this." I think almost every single time we have this comment, I'm like, "Oh, I really like this week," and
we have fairly differing opinions, I would say. On generative art in general, I guess, but in terms of the ones that we're both just aware of and keeping abreast of, it's generally the Art Blocks curated stuff, and definitely our tastes don't really match up a ton.
Like I will, this is probably a drop that I will probably mint 1 of if it's reasonable. I mean, but I think it's more likely for me to look through secondary and find a couple that appeal to me. I say this, the last time that I looked at a drop and like I haven't done a lot of research yet. This is my first impression. It was like, I don't really care for that. It was Gazers, and then we all know how that worked out. So I need to spend a little more time reading like the description, playing with it, seeing if it's interactable and all sorts of stuff. So I reserve the right to change my opinion.
Yeah, it looks really actually quite interesting to me. I'm excited to read the little write-up about it when I'm not in the middle of recording a podcast. I think it would be bad podcasting if I read that.
I think it would be
myself.
too. Yeah. There was another very exciting drop that happened over the last couple of weeks. Tectonics by MP Cos. Why don't you tell us about that?
I was very looking forward to this.
You were pretty involved with that.
Yeah. So what happened a few weeks ago, I don't know why or how exactly, but I started looking into the artist who did Chimera, which is a previous curated drop. I liked the drop a good amount. It wasn't a top one to me, but I definitely liked it. But I ended up going to their website and seeing some of their prior works, and I was like, "Ooh, this artist is doing some really interesting next level stuff." So I just kind of got more interested in acquiring more chimeras, and also I'm going to really try and pay attention to the next time this artist drops something. And so I put on tweet notifications for them. And literally maybe 4 days after I did that, they tweeted their next project is coming out. It's a drop of 90. It's called Tectonics, and it's going to be basically 90 simultaneous auctions of these pre-minted pieces. And so I was very excited for it. And then I carved out a block of time for myself, looked at all 90 of the mints, made myself a little spreadsheet where I put down. So there's only one trait for each of them that's public, at least, and that's just the palette. The palette is the only thing that, again, publicly is a trait that you can differentiate them. So there's not as much, possibility for rarity or whatever. It's more of an aesthetics thing. But anyway, so I wrote down the number of all the mints, what the palette was, and then just kind of my notes in the next column for how much I like them, basically. Oh, and the other thing was the prices that the auctions would start off was randomized. It was, I believe, between 0.5 and 1.5 ETH for all of them. So I had another column for that. And so I basically just made a list of, the 20-ish, 15, 20 that I thought were the nicest, and then which of those had the most affordable starting prices, and just was very prepared for the drop. And then it happened, long story short, I ended up only getting one, which was less than I wanted. But the one that I got was basically the one that I wanted the most of the whole collection. Excuse me. So I was very happy about that. And the people that were collecting them and bidding on them was sort of very high-end generative art collectors. So it feels like, a very sort of popular drop with the right crowd.
You had your 6529s, your DC collector.
Yeah, it was very funny being in bidding wars with people who I knew I absolutely could not win true bidding wars with. I had to just hope that they got bored. And basically all the ones where I was competing with those people, I ended up losing. But I did have to go back and forth with a more normal person on the one that I bought, and it ended up costing me 4 ETH.
Yeah, which is, I mean, the floor is above that. It's it's a great collection. I was just not prepared for it. I didn't find out about it, I think, till like the day before or day of, because you were talking to me about it, and I didn't really look through it. I'm a big fan of their work, and Chimera is great. And I looked at it, I was like, these are nice, but I just didn't set aside the time to, get the ETH ready and decide how much I'm going to bid. So I did end up bidding on a few just before falling asleep, and then I woke up and had got none. But the one you have it's Infinity Stone-ish, right? Or Infinity Gauntlet-ish.
The Infinity Gauntlet, it reminds me of the Infinity Gauntlet because it's very golden overall, but then has a bunch of bright colors, as if to, of the Infinity Stones in the Gauntlet.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah. The collection is great. There's a lot of really, really great looking things in there. And if some, again, a lot of very serious collectors in it, but there's probably some people who are less serious, and hopefully I can acquire a couple more over time from people who are willing to let it go at reasonable prices.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, got my Currency by Damien Hirst.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
I just got basically lazy in the last 2 days. I can't believe
you were talking about it for like a year.
I know. And I had two, so I could have easily just kept one and burned one, but instead I just kept both as NFTs.
I mean, I bet if you work a little bit, you could buy one, like a physical version from someone.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, or trade. Here we go.
Now, did you see
that this is a Damien Hirst piece of art?
Yeah, he's got like custom frames that he's selling on the website as well that are like specifically that size or whatever.
I didn't know that. The funny thing is about this is I got home, I think it was yesterday, the day before, and it was just sitting on top of our mailbox in the apartment building, which is like
that's
20 mailboxes, and it's just this, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 piece of art was just waiting there. But I'm sort of grateful that I got it, because there's a whole bunch of customs kerfuffles you have to. Yeah. But that was a little highlight of my week.
Nice.
FX Hash has been sort of having a moment, or even more specifically, Zancan has just been going absolutely crazy over there, and he's always gone crazy
for a long time, though, right?
But it's sort of just stepped up another notch. He did some event in New York City. I believe it was New York, maybe it was London somewhere, maybe New York, where he released like 100,
maybe
an edition of 100, each day for 4 days.
Maybe New York.
Maybe New York.
It could have been London though.
They were great, and then I think he did like a one-on-one auction at the end that went for like $60,000, TES or something, and Garden Monolith had like 100,000 TES in volume this week, and the Kindergarten Monolith floor is like 5,000 TES. It's just, he's going bonkers.
I didn't know how so many people on my Twitter timeline were getting the pieces. I was like, this is crazy. And then I was like, oh, of course they're edition pieces.
Right.
I was like, wow, this is crazy. But yeah.
Garden Monolith's floor is 30,000 ETH, TES.
That's
ETH.
Crazy.
Yeah,
30,000 ETH. Wow, that would be really crazy.
That would be something. I mean, Galaxy RGB told us, he wrote a thread in December last year. It was like, the Fidenza of FX Hash might have already been created in Garden Monolith. And
yeah.
Have you been collecting much over on FX Hash lately?
A decent amount, probably not much since the last time we talked. When I had got like all those rough cuts, and then one other project I can't think of the name of. But then recently I minted 3. I think it's called Provence, which is sort of another one of these kind of naturey things that's meant to look, I guess, like the south of France. I can't remember, or possibly Italy was the inspiration for it. But I like those and minted a few of them. But I haven't. There's also been a couple collections that have minted recently that I liked but missed out on, and so I've just put in some bids on them that have so far not hit.
Adrift being one of them.
Yes, which I was jealous that you got. And I think you got one of the ones with a comment in it too, if I remember correctly.
I got a yes, yeah, I did.
I've been bidding on specifically those ones.
It's a cool drop. It's quite different.
Yeah, I like it.
I have not really been doing too much on FX Hash other than
traveling. You've been busy.
I've been traveling a little bit. I've been busy. I got a bunch of travel coming up. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Is there anything else generative art related that we should touch on? Talk about Any other art blocks drops? All right. Well, this has been
Did you get a 3-minute meditation on Artblocks? I thought that was an interesting concept for a project.
Oh, I wanted that so much.
I think it might still be open for minting. They did not mint out right away at the very least.
But I remember keeping an eye on that. Yeah. Looks like Art Plus Brad has something coming out soon as well, which I really like his work in general. 3-minute meditation. Yeah. All right. This has been Art Blocks. You're on general. What do you want to talk about for your projects? Do you have any generative art stuff?
I actually opened up P5JS a couple days ago. Monday, the day after the terrible Survivor Pool bloodbath. I was like, well, I guess I don't have to fucking spend all my time thinking about this shit anymore. So
better than like 7 weeks in when you don't make any money.
Maybe. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Yeah, you still have the hope with 7 weeks in.
And like fun sweating, you get to feel good when your team survives. I didn't even get that.
You got one team left, right?
Yeah, I got one. But I used clearly the best team in the league. So not only am I down to one entry, but that entry is very, very weak.
Oh, that's a shame. In the interlude, Jamie was saying how Jamie just stood up and turned away, and now he's back.
A little adjusting of my sitting position.
I have on the like the outline of the episode, ZenLabs, Jamie's generative art, and Survivor Pool check-in ? And then because a few days ago Jamie was spending a lot of time on his Survivor Pool, and then that didn't go so well.
Spending a lot of time on it for 2 months in a row now, just staring at the numbers, staring at the schedules, planning out the different pick paths I could take, and it was all for naught.
Now, what is a Survivor Pool for people who might not know?
Okay, so it's a form of gambling generally in the NFL. I guess you could do it with other things, but it would be much tougher. And basically, each week you have to pick a team that wins their game. That's all you have to do. But once you pick a team, you can no longer pick that team in a future week. And so you start with, say, 100 people, and you just go until only one person survives, and then they win all the money. It's a super fun form of gambling. And while I was in Vegas for the World Series of Poker, I signed up at one of the casinos, the Circa specifically, for what I think it's the biggest survivor pool in the world. It was a $6 million guaranteed prize pool. So they need 6,000 entrants. It's $1,000 center. They needed 6,000 entrants to match that, and they exceeded that. I think they got 6,133.
That's got to be a soft field.
There's definitely some. By the way, week 1, 23 people just didn't even make a pick. So you're gone. Which is funny, but and the maximum amount of entries an individual can get is 6. So I signed up for the maximum of 6, and now 1 week in, I have lost 5 of my 6 entries, which is stunning. It was a very bloody week for everybody. Basically 55 to 60% of the field got eliminated. So it's not as if I did, just stupendously bad relative to the field, but I did do bad. I lost 83% of my entries.
Yeah.
As opposed to, 55, 60.
But,
and it was very, very sad. And the way in which the teams lost was like particularly ridiculous and painful to be watching. But, what are you going to do? That's gambling, right?
That is gambling. You were saying that because of that, you fired up P5JS a couple of days ago.
So I had been spending, like I said a minute and a half ago, just a lot of time planning the survivor pool, getting some code in place so I could kind of scrape things and calculate things, and just was trying to be ready to put forth my best effort to win the $6 million. And now, it's because it's much more complicated when you have a bunch of entries, because you have all these different, weeks where you're strong and weak and blah, blah, blah. But having one entry takes almost no work on a week-to-week basis to put through. So I basically had a bunch of time that I thought I was going to be busy working on this week-to-week that has opened up. So I did open up P5JS after that catastrophic weekend and started tinkering with it a little bit again. But it's been so long since I was in there working on the project that I had been working on that I'm thinking about kind of just starting a whole other thing. And I've also been spending just a lot of time appreciating generative art lately, largely thanks to the tectonics thing. I was really into that. I just dropped something. But I am excited to get back to that. And yeah, I've also been doing a good amount of programming in Python for all of the survivor pool stuff. So I have a little bit of a programming brain going right now. So I'm just going to kind of transition that into the P5JS brain.
That's exciting. Are you kind of at home for the next few months, ready to just dig into this, or you have a bunch of travel and stuff planned? That's
I have travel coming up at the end of October, but until then, I'm pretty much just at home.
Cool. I'm still waiting to see your first FX Hash project, your first Artblocks factory project. Artblocks curated one day. That would be something.
We're all waiting.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'll speak about ZenLabs, which I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast. ZenLabs is the parent company to Zen Academy, 333 Club, everything that I'm doing basically business related. It is. I've spent a lot of the time over the last few months thinking about the scale and direction that we want to take and alternative revenue streams so that we don't have to rely on selling tokens to the community or our community buying and selling tokens amongst themselves, aka secondary market royalties, as well as not getting VC funding or external funding. And we've sort of put together a plan, and I'm excited to begin to execute on that and reveal that over the next few months. And it's just an exciting time for all things ZenLabs. We're going to be in Vegas from October 10th to the 13th. There's a Web3 conference there, so I'll be in town for a couple more days than that as well.
Okay. See, I didn't even know why you were going to Vegas. All of a sudden, you just started talking about how you were going to be in Vegas.
I'll be in Vegas then. I'll be in Artblocks. I'll be in Artblocks. I'll be in Marfa for Artblocks. I'm all in Artblocks. I think it's November 10th-ish, that weekend. And
sounds right.
Yeah, that should be fun. And yeah, next week or the week after, I should have more to share, like PFP stuff, consulting stuff, media stuff. It's a whole like empire thing that I'm mapping out and building, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's just been so many NFT projects, and it's so rare to see one that can sort of maintain momentum, reinvent itself, not just fizzle out as new shinier objects in the NFT marketplace come about. Um, so it's just kind of interesting seeing somebody who actually cares and has a project, trying to think about it, and run it in a way that's sort of sustainable, and isn't just built on the immediate aftermath hype, basically, and just a bunch of people trying to flip against each other until they get bored of it, and then it dies.
Yeah.
I've actually just been, I'm talking about how I've been buying a lot of generative art lately. I've been selling out of a bunch of the NFTs that I had that sort of fall into that other category of just communities that have or had potential, but then just never really were able to take off. So I've been selling out of a lot of that stuff and getting into a lot more generative art that doesn't rely on any of that sort of effort to maintain its worth.
It makes sense. I think if we go back like 10 months in this podcast and listen to some of our earlier episodes, and I think specifically you spoke a lot about how there are a lot of these mid-tier projects in like the 0.5 to 1.5 ETH range, and just most of them were not going to succeed. Some of them might break out, but most of them would not.
I feel like I've talked about that a lot, because the thing what I was saying is that there's just way more supply than there are users with real demand for these. And although demand is theoretically increasing, it's not even close to as quickly as the supply kept inflating, as we have another drop, another 10K drop, another 10K drop. And then it's still just, for the most part, the same 4,000 people trading them back and forth. And they all own, 30 different PFP projects, multiple pieces from some of them. It's just like, there's no way that all these floors are going to be able to sustain unless somehow we start onboarding 50 times more people per day than we have been, which is not the case.
No. Who knew Pudgy Penguins would be that mid-tier project that came through? And they're doing great. I think of all of the ones in that range, they're like they have 3 ETH or something. Yeah, they had that comeback story.
They had a more intriguing, highs and lows and drama attached to them that I guess, for the holders made them feel more like they were really committed to it, rather than the ones that kind of just were able to go up, and they're, it's easy to be a holder of a project that only goes up. And then all of a sudden when it falters, you get a little bit scared. But the ones that kind of started out with a little bit more rocky of a path, it's sort of in some ways easier to just kind of hold on then.
100%. Yeah. Should we play What Am I Thinking and wrap this episode up?
I was thinking about getting a nice fun trivia question to ask you, like I did with like the top 5 whatever it was, produce products or whatever.
Yeah, it was grains, like grain, rice, wheat, sugar,
crops, I think. Crops. Food crops.
Sugarcane.
But
was one of
we're
them.
Gonna play What Am I Thinking?
We are. Maybe for the new listeners, this is a game where Jamie and I, it was originated because we needed to come up with like a code word for a POAP, and Jamie said, let's play this game where we both think for a few moments, and then on the count of 3, say a word or a short phrase, and then presumably the first thing we say are just going to be 2 completely random things, and then we do the exact same thing where we like think for a few moments, then count down, and then we have to try and say a word that is like in the middle of those 2 words, and you just keep doing it until you hit the same word. And we've had mixed results over the over the last year. I'm not going to say who was at fault and who wasn't some of those times, but
I will say that it's generally your fault if it doesn't go well.
I'll take the blame for a couple of them. What was that one? Tezos instead of open sea, the ocean.
Tezos and ocean or something, and you didn't say open sea. I can't forget, but it was something ridiculous.
Something like that.
There was also a salt or pepper one very early that was really bad.
Oh, that was what sugar and I can't remember that either.
Yeah, but it was ridiculous. Anyway, let's get to it.
Coffee and salt, and I said pepper, and you said sugar.
That sounds right. I have my word.
I have mine.
Never mind. I just my word reminded me of another thing, but it was going to totally spoil what my word was if I asked you about it. We can do it after. All right,
Okay.
ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Chess.
Berlin. Ooh.
The Berlin defense is a thing, but now I just burned our ability to say that, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one.
Sure, I got one.
3, 2, 1. Bobby
Russia.
Fischer. Bobby Fischer and Russia. I got one.
Who did he play? In all right.
See, this is why it's usually Roy's fault, everyone. You ready?
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Boris
Kasparov.
Spassky.
Yes, I knew it was that after you said it.
SMH.
Okay.
Okay, well.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Karpov.
Yeah,
okay, not bad.
Yeah.
One later than it should have been.
Yeah, I will own that one. Yeah.
Now, the thing that thinking of chess reminded me of, have you heard the cheating scandal that's been going on lately? Or the theoretical cheating scandal?
I vaguely heard something about it. Magnus Carlsen accused someone of cheating or something like that?
Not overtly, but yes,
Subvertly.
Basically. The guy's name is Hans Niemann, and the theory that's been going around is that he has vibrating anal beads.
Oh my god!
In his butt that are vibrating to let him know what move to make. And I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that. This has been episode 52.
This is a family-friendly show. If you like it, comment, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, follow our Twitters, follow our Substacks. We don't really write that much anymore.
I'm planning on writing another one.
Planning on writing more? Yeah, I am too.
I have a good idea for one.
Yeah. All right. We got good newsletters. Go check them out. And thank you for watching, listening. Bye everyone.
Bye.